Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Philadelphia Baptist Church broadcast. And Lord willing, this will be the last Sunday that be preaching or teaching to mostly empty auditorium. So we look forward to having church services next Sunday here and have the normal amount of folks. We will practice distancing and all the things that they recommend, and because we don't want to spread the virus any more than anybody else does. But we definitely want to have the church here and have the fellowship. So this morning, we're going to have a word of prayer, and then we're going to start the third part to the study of money. So let's just have a word of prayer real quick. Father, we do ask your blessing this morning. Thank you, Father, for just the opportunity to get the word out, Lord. And we thank God for social media that made it possible, and the internet and things like that, Lord. And we just appreciate those things now, that technology that made it possible. But Lord, we long for the fellowship of having believers here and sitting in our services, and we think we can do that safely. And we just pray you just bless now the Sunday school and then the preaching hour, and we'll thank you for that, Father, and just ask your blessing on it for Jesus' sake. Amen. All right. Study of Money, Part 3. And if I had to title this, I would call it The Den of Thieves. Den of Thieves. Look in John chapter 2. What's going on in our world, I don't think is just another series of bad luck or unfortunate events or anything like that. I believe that we're working to an end, and I can see it from the Scriptures. When you believe the Bible, when you read the Bible, when you study the Bible, you look at the world through a Bible filter, and it's amazing what you can see when you do that. And I can see something unfolding. You say, how fast is it going to unfold? I don't know, but I think it's unfolding before our eyes. And I don't think it's going to be so terribly long before the rapture happens. Now, that's just my opinion. I don't think it's going to be too terribly long before we see the currencies collapse. We may see the collapse of our country. And when you see what I'm going to present here this morning, or at least we'll see how much we get through, you'll see why I believe that. In John chapter 2, starting at verse 12, we're going to find that there's a pattern in this world that comes right out of the Scriptures. In John chapter 2, verse 12, it says, "And after this he went down to Capernaum, he and his mother and his brethren, his disciples, and they continued there not many days. And the Jews' Passover was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem, and found in the temple those that sold oxen and sheep and doves, and the changers of money sitting. And when he had made a scourge of small cords, he drove them out of the temple, and the sheep and the oxen, and poured out the changers' money, and overthrew the tables. And said unto them that sold doves, Take these things hence, make not my Father's house a house of merchandise. And his disciples remembered that it was written, The zeal of thine house hath eaten me up." And that Old Testament reference is Psalm 69, verse 9. And you could, when you first look at this, you think, well, that's why it's funny that we don't allow anything sold in the auditorium. What do you call sanctuary? They don't allow anything to be sold in the sanctuary, but they'll pass a plate and take up money. Kind of interesting. But he's saying there that he says, don't make my Father's house a house of merchandise. And you would think that it's just about this buying and selling going on. Well, it wasn't just about that, because he calls them a den of thieves. And that's where in Mark chapter 11, you go ahead and turn there. Mark chapter 11, we're going to look at verse 15 to 18. But what I want you to see is that they have the animals there that they're selling for the sacrifices. And here, let me set the stage of why this existed. Whenever the Jews were required in Deuteronomy, I believe it's 16:16, 3 times a year shall all thy males appear before the Lord, and they were not to appear empty-handed. They were to have their tithe money, they were to have their sacrifices, and many of them were traveling from as far away as Spain and Rome and all different kind of places coming into Jerusalem for the feast days. That would be the Feast of Passover to Unleavened Bread, the Feast of Weeks, or Pentecost or the Feast of Tabernacles. They would come back to Jerusalem to celebrate those feasts. And on certain set feasts, they were to bring their tithe, and they were to bring an offering, always to offer an offering. So, you know, it's like if you sell cows, it's kind of hard to carry all the cows with you, you know. You can get one in each pocket, but that's about it. But how would you get all the animals that, you know, was your profit? Well, they were told, and we saw that verses last week, they were told to convert it to money. So they would bring the money there, and when they needed to purchase an animal for sacrifice, well, lo and behold, right there in the temple, you know, the courtyard, not inside the Holy of Holies, but in the courtyard, there they are selling the animals that you need for the sacrifice. But the thing is, it's even their money that you have to change to. And therein is the basis for the entire banking system around the globe. And it's right out of the Bible. And Jesus said he called them a den of thieves. Look in Mark chapter 11, verse 15 to 18. It says, and they came to Jerusalem, and Jesus went into the temple and began to cast out them that sold and bought. Notice they're doing both. They're just not selling something, they're buying something. They sold and bought in the temple, and overthrew the tables of the money changers and the seats of them that sold doves. And would not, and by the way, the doves are for the poor. An offering of doves was a poor man's offering. So they're doing something also to the poor in these exchanges. And would not suffer that any man should carry any vessel through the temple. In other words, you can't bring your own. You ever notice that when you go into a stadium, you can't bring a can of pop in your pocket? Oh no, you got to buy it from them. Why? They control that marketplace. They control what you buy. It doesn't, so they stop you from doing that. Would not suffer that any man should carry any vessel through the temple. And he taught, saying unto them, it is written, my house. Notice he said in John, he said, my Father's house. And here, Jesus Christ says, my house. You say, why is that? Because he said, the Father and I are one. In my house shall be called of all nations the house of prayer, but ye have made it a den of thieves. It wasn't just selling the merchandise. It had to be more than that. He calls them thieves. I mean, if you had to buy an animal for a sacrifice, then what would be wrong with it? If you needed an animal, it had to be the right animal. But there's more to the story than that, and we'll look at it. And the scribes and the chief priest heard it. What? Oh yeah, this is religious based. This is a system that ties into one religion. And the ones that are running that religion are also running this show here, these den of thieves, because it says, the scribes and chief priests heard it and sought how they might destroy him. Why? Oh, he's cutting into their profits. He's hurting business. Look at him. He must be an anti-capitalist. This is anything but capitalism. This is more like socialism or communism. He saw how they might destroy him, for they feared him, because all the people was astonished at his doctrine. So here we have a religiously controlled market where everything that's, and by the way, the temple was a secured area. You could not just walk in, prance in anytime you wanted. So they controlled who came into the marketplace. They not only controlled that, but they controlled the animals that were within the market. So they're already going to make profit because they've bought these animals from those that are without. And now they're going to resell them. You ever known anybody to resell something for the same price? Rarely. They're going to mark it up, is what they're going to do. But not only that, but we're going to find out that they even have a certain money that they take. And without that certain money, you can't buy anything. So that's why the money changers are there. Because we're going to see from the Old Testament the way that God set it up, you didn't need to have a money changer. All you needed was a scale. What we have in these two passages is a microcosm for world domination. A blueprint for a global conspiracy. Right there it is. All they had to do was follow it. It is the plot to captivate the marketplace and the currency in the name of a religion under one ruler. All they lack at this point is the ruler. Everything else is in place. 1 John 5:19 says, and we know that we are of God, and the whole world lieth in wickedness. Yeah, that's quite a statement. But you know what? The whole world is under this system we just talked about, a den of thieves. And that's why it lieth in wickedness. He said in James 4:4, ye adulterers and adulteresses, know ye not that the friendship of the world is enmity with God? Whosoever therefore will be a friend of the world is the enemy of God. God doesn't like this world system. He hates it. You know, what the Bible says, you may have to live in it, but you don't have to love it. And anyone that's a friend of the world that loves this world system are an enemy of God. Because why? He said that the whole thing is wicked. And you know, we have a money system in this world, and it is all the same. It may have different pictures on it, but it's all the same. It's all the same type of money system, and he says that's wickedness. And we're going to find out why. There's four objectives. When the tribulation takes place, there's 4 objectives that have to happen before that thing can move forward, and 3 of them have already happened. 3 of them have already happened. First one is to cultivate a one-world religion. A religion that will be also tied into Judaism. Now, the reason I say that is like Catholicism is tied into Christianity, okay? But Catholicism is not Christianity. It just has some flavors of Christianity. It's Babylonian. You can't tell a Catholic that. He doesn't see it. But we see it because we have this description of Babylonianism. You know, we're baking cakes of the Queen of Heaven and all that stuff, you know, and black-robed Baalite priest, and, you know, who call a younger man father. I mean, we've got all that information in Judges and throughout the Old Testament, through Jeremiah. We have that information that shows us what their religion actually is. But you notice they call themselves Christian. Well, this is the Antichrist. He has his religion, but he can call it Judaism. As a matter of fact, if you look at what the Bible says, and first off, look at Revelation chapter 13, verse 4. Revelation 13:4. So we've already seen that this thing's already played out one time before, but it was a smaller version of world domination. It's just that they dominated the temple and the market and the money and the religion. And they're going to do the same. And the first thing you got to do is cultivate a one-world religion. Revelation 13:4 says, and they worshiped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And this is the whole world. Now, I know some people say, we're not going to worship the dragon. We're going to, well, if you're not worshiping Jesus Christ, you are worshiping the dragon. He that is not with me is against me. He that gathereth not with me scattereth abroad. There's no other choice to that thing. You're either, if you haven't believed on and received Jesus Christ, you're worshiping the devil. I don't care how good I don't care what your moral compass is. I don't care what kind of righteous man you are. I don't care how much money you give to the poor. Without your love for God and your decision for Him, you're on the devil's side. That's all there is to it. That's that thing over there about Jacob and Esau. Show me where show me where Esau ever stole anything. Show me where Esau ever deceived somebody. Show me where Esau ever treated his parents ill. As a matter of fact, he was a good boy. He really was. Jacob was a thief, a deceiver. I mean, that guy, he really needed some mental help, man. I mean, but you know why God chose Jacob? Because Esau didn't have the time of day for God. That's what this world's like. Oh, they may hold the moral compass and the ethics and, even the 10 Commandments, but they got no time for Him. They got no time for God. They don't want Him. If they wanted Him, they'd talk about Him. If they wanted Him, they'd worship Him. If they wanted Him, He'd be on the news every night about what good He did or who He punished. But you don't hear that. So they're going to cultivate a one-world religion. And it says that they're all going to worship the dragon and the beast. And they are. And then it says, turn to Daniel 9:27. This is where we get the connection to Israel and Judaism. Remember what Jesus said. He says, if I come in my Father's name, you receive me not. Jesus means Jehovah saves. But if another shall come in his own name, him ye will receive. And you know who he's talking about. He is talking about the Antichrist. And the world's going to receive him. Even the Jews are going to receive him. Look what he does. Daniel 9:27. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. We know that's a 7-year period of time. That's the last week of Daniel's 70 weeks. And that is a time of tribulation. But notice it says he'll confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. He's talking about the Mosaic covenant. Why? Because it says in the midst of the week, in other words, it doesn't run a full 7 years. In the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. You see that Mosaic covenant, he's going to help them start the sacrifices, but in the midst of the week, he stops it. And that's when everything goes haywire. That's when they start saying the overspreading of abominations. That's the idol he sets up in the holy place, the abomination that maketh desolate. And that's when those Jews realize, uh-oh, we got the wrong Messiah. We got the wrong Christ. You see, who were they worshiping? They were worshiping the beast and the dragon. That's all there is to it. And then they're going to see it. But what I want you to see is that connection to Israel. The dragon and the beast and the false prophet are going to have this connection with Israel because they need a one-world religion. This is going to be it. Ought to be a mix of Babylonianism and Judaism. You say, won't the Jews spot that? Well, before it'd be entirely, well, not too late, but very late in the game. About halfway through that 70th week, that's when they'll spot it. That's a little late. It'll be rough on them because they're going to find out that they put all their trust in somebody and it's not their Messiah. It's a false Messiah. And that's when they have to flee out into the wilderness. But going back, they'll have to cultivate a one-world religion. That's being done right now. It has been done since, about 325 AD. And actually, if you really want to go back to the foundation of it, it goes all the way back in the Old Testament, time of Judges. That's when you find that Babylonianism coming forward. It just all the way through. There's nothing new under the sun. It's just the same thing. Just the names have been changed to protect the guilty. That's all you got to do is rename your false god, give him a biblical name. Everybody goes, oh, praise the Lord. And they're worshiping a false god. So not only will they cultivate a one-world religion, but they're going to have to create a one-world currency. They're going to have to. And this is why I say there's a great possibility that our world is not going to recover from what's just happened. That it's going to keep floundering. It may, what we call a dead cat bounce. Where you drop something off a building, if it's so far down, finally it'll bounce a little bit. We're probably going to get this little hiccup. And then you'll probably see the Dow drop another 4,000 or 5,000 points. Probably go to about 5,000. And then you'll find out that trying to crank up this engine we call the economy is not that easy. You can't just turn it over. What we have stopped takes years to get going. I don't think it'll survive it. I don't think the currency will survive it because of all the printing. You see what we're getting set up for? We're getting ready to dump the currencies of this world and set up a one-world currency. That's what we're getting ready to do. They are going to make use of this just as sure as you live and breathe. You don't let a good crisis go to waste. This is perfect. But don't just let it kind of flounder around. Don't let a little chaos, a little war. Because you got to remember, man, oil just tanked. Do you know how many nations rely on oil to feed their people? Russia's one of them. What do you think they're going to do? They're going to be looking around for some rich neighbor to rob. Just like any nation does when you take away and people start starving. You got Saudi Arabia. You got, I think, even Iran. Of course, they tried to embargo them, but they're selling to somebody. And there are other countries. I think I had a list of 7 or 8. Venezuela. You think Venezuela's got it tough now? Those poor people are going to starve to death down there. Because now they don't even have the little bit of oil that they were selling. Well, they have a lot of oil, but they weren't doing too well then. The bottom has dropped out of that thing. By the way, all oil is purchased in the world by American dollars. We are the default currency of this planet right now. And it is getting kicked from every different direction. In fact, everybody's fleeing to dollars. Everybody's fleeing to dollars, but they're fleeing to something that's just as worthless as the paper they had. I'll show you what it looks like to have mass inflation. You see, what's it from? Printing money, printing more and more and more. Like the 3 trillion they just got done printing and the 5 trillion they're getting ready to print. Now, I realize that when I say print, all it is going 3, there's zeros, trillion, enter. That's about how it works. They create that money out of nothing. All right? This is Zimbabwe. This was legal currency. And it says, I promise to pay on bearer demand $1 for the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe. If I pronounce that right. And there's the $1. Okay? This is probably how it used to be. And then hyperinflation hit. And this also is legal currency. It costs them more to print this than, and it says, I promise to pay the bearer on demand $100 trillion. I kid you not. That is a real currency right there. I bought it off the internet. They were more valuable selling off the internet for what I'm doing than they're worthless in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe doesn't even have a currency. They use the American dollar. They use the euro, the pound. They'll use anything, but they have no currency of their own to this day because of this. $100 trillion. That's what it says. That's called hyperinflation. You know why that happens? They keep printing money to where it's worthless, just like we're doing. And they're kind of telling you, they're warning you, this ain't good, but, we'll make it up later. That's what we keep saying. We're going to make it up later. Well, wait till you have to pay the tab. So that's why there's going to be a one world currency. And I'll tell you what I think it's going to be like. There's no way we can print enough currency like this. I mean, we have printing presses running 24 hours a day. It'd still take them years probably to print enough currency for the whole world. So it's going to be a cyber currency. It's going to be like, we already have something like that if you think about it. We have credit cards and things like that, but I'll tell you what I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be a cyber currency, but I think it's going to be gold-backed. I think it's going to be gold-backed. In other words, they're going to try to figure out something, and of course, around the middle of the tread, there's a perfect, hey, why don't we just put a mark on us that has our accounts and everything, and you just scan it. That way you don't have to carry a wallet. You don't have to worry about somebody stealing your money. They might cut off your hand, but you wouldn't have to worry about them stealing your money. If you came in with a hand in Kroger's and took somebody else's hand and waved it across there, probably draw some attention. But if you have their credit card, a lot of times you might get away with it. If you got somebody's head, where they're scanning the head, I don't think that'll work. So it's if you think about it, it's a pretty safe thing, If it wasn't connected with the devil, I might have thought it was a good idea. But they're going to create this currency, probably be cyber, probably be gold-backed, and it's going to lead to the mark of the beast. And if you think about it, it makes perfect sense. Do you know that they can, right now, let's face it, folks cheat on their taxes, They make a little money here. You're supposed to pay taxes on the stuff you sell at a garage sale, believe it or not. You think anybody does that? Of course they don't. Well, you will then, because everything's accounted for when you scan that, and there's no currency to deal with, so you have to use that. See, it even makes sense when you think about a big world, but it just, the connection to it. Look at Revelation chapter 18. Revelation chapter 18. Look at verse 11 to 13. And it says, the merchants of the earth, this is the whole marketplace. The merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her. We'll find out who it is. For no man buyeth their merchandise anymore. And look what the first one is, the merchandise of gold, silver, precious stones, and of pearls, and of fine linen, and purple, and silk, and scarlet, and all fine wood, and all manner vessels of ivory, and all manner vessels of most precious wood, and of brass, and of iron, and marble, and cinnamon, and odors, and ointments, and frankincense, and wine, and oil, and fine flour, and wheat, and beast, and sheep, and horses, and chariots, and slaves. Slave trade's coming back. And slaves, and the souls of men. What's vastly interesting there, that the most important thing's at the top of the list, and the least important thing is at the bottom of the list in this religion, in this world religion. And that is, gold is important, and the souls of men are the least important. They're the last thing on the list. But do you see how the merchants of the earth, it says, shall weep and mourn over her? He's talking about when Babylon's destroyed. I'm thinking, okay, what's that tell me? Well, it tells me this, excuse me, that the great hub of an economical, of the economy is not the United States of America. And it's not China. The economic hub is right there in Europe, and specifically one particular country. Now, I'm not saying that they produce everything, but everything flows into them. I looked up the shipping in Italy. It's amazing. They can handle these super container cargo vessels, the super big ones. They have the ability to handle those in their ports. They have one port that's like 6th in Italy and like 9th in all of Europe, how big it is. And you know, Italy just kind of juts out there. It's got that boot, you know, it sits right out there in the Mediterranean. Perfect for commerce. Perfect. And they have a very good rail system within Italy. Do you know where the main hub is? Rome. That's where the main hub is for the rail system. So they have this transportation type mecca, perfect for all goods to flow in through there. And you know, if you think about it, the Vatican's been acquiring gold. You didn't know that. The Vatican has probably more gold than anybody. They are the richest institution in the world, bar none. And they probably have tons and tons and tons of gold. Of course, they kind of got their hand in everybody's business, the kings of the earth, you know that. So, wouldn't it be something if the cyber currency, the digital currency, was backed up by gold, and that gold was stored in Rome? Maybe on a place like 108 acres. I'm thinking of a place like that. 108 acres, got vast buildings and underground stuff, you know, well protected. Wouldn't that be something? Because the merchants of the earth are mourning over the loss of gold and all kinds of things. I mean, they say, oh, well, we lost a portion of it. They act like they lost almost all of it. See, what they're going to do? They're going to create a one world currency. And I think it's all based in Europe, just like the Bible said. But you notice, I've been saying this for a couple years now. I said, I don't understand why we have Donald Trump and the way things are going. How many times have you heard me say that? That it's not going by the way that the Bible says things are going to go. And I said, well, maybe it's a respite. Or maybe they're going to collapse the whole thing right on him. How many of you have heard me say it? Raise your hand. Well, I got a few folks here, but you heard me? Okay. I hate being a prophet. No. That was a guess. It's a guess that this is going to be it. This might be one step toward the whole thing, but I think this is going to lead to the demise of our money system, which is the demise of our country. Actually, it's the demise of the whole world. They're all tied together. All this paper is all tied together. And by the way, we're not the only ones printing as fast as we can print. We're not the only ones putting funny money into the system. By the way, somebody on the Fox Business News used that very term, funny money. If you had monopoly money, it wouldn't be any more worth anything than this. And by the way, when I say fiat, I know I keep saying paper. The word fiat doesn't mean paper. It means by decree. It'd be like, I were king of the forest. Okay, say I'm king for a day. Okay? I'm king for a day. I'm King Thomas. I decree that anyone holding one of these is worth $100. That's what fiat means, by decree. And the federal government, just like this government, said, I decree that is $1. And then they had to turn around and say, and that is $100 trillion. And they won't buy you anything. So by decree, that's what it means. It means that there's some authority backing it up, but that there's no, what we call, intrinsic value. In other words, there's no value to this. It can look pretty, I mean, it can have all kinds of little pictures on it, some dolphins or seals or something sweet looking, and it's just worthless paper. And the only reason your dollars and your 5s, 10s, 20s, 50s, and 100s can buy anything is because the government decreed that it can, until it can no longer decree that it can. And then it won't. And you know what you have in your hand? You have paper in your hand with an intrinsic value of 0. And all fiat decreed currencies always return to 0. All of them. In fact, there are literally thousands in history of this very thing going on, and they've all returned to 0. The average lifespan is 30 years. We're overdue. And we're spending like a drunken man with somebody else's credit card. They can't print this money fast. They can't hit that computer fast enough because they know that it's on the brink. They know it's on the brink. When you're paying 0 interest rate, which means that's how they bring the money back in, and you're paying 0 interest rate and sometimes a negative where they're paying you to take the money, you know something's wrong. And by the way, every time we dilute our money supply, we dilute it for the entire world because we're the default currency. There's more dollars out there than there is here actually in currency. So what happens is when we do that, we hurt everybody. And I mean everybody around the globe. Everything becomes more expensive because we diluted our money supply for our own good. And the world is about done with us. That's what came together with Brazil and Russia and India and China and South Africa called the BRICS. And you know what they were doing? They're all buying gold. You know why? They're going to come up with currencies that are gold-backed and just suffocate the dollar. And if that ever happens in the short term, which I thought about that, could happen. If they were ever to kick out something like that, well, let me ask, which one would you take? Something that's gold-backed or one of these? I mean, if you had something that's backed by gold, it says gold certificate. I don't care if it's a yuan or a ruble or a rupee, what does it matter? If it's gold-backed, it's gold-backed. It's as good as gold. Or you can have this. Here, take this. So what happened? It would cause ours to collapse immediately. Everybody would run to it because it doesn't inflate. They show through history, using a gold standard, they can show where 150 to 200 years stabilization all the way through. And usually a war hits. When a war hits, no man goeth to war without counting the cost. That's when you start seeing these spikes and everything, because war is extremely costly. But if there's no absence of war and there's a gold standard, stabilization, 200 years, 150 years, and 0 inflation. Why would you have inflation? Nothing's inflating. Gold retains its value. That's the whole point. So when our den of thieves decided to take us off the gold standard 1933, the silver standard 1948, and by 1971 Richard Nixon completely divorced us from the gold standard, And then they decided to give us pot metal for coins. What do you think they were doing? I know what they were doing. They were robbing you. They have your wealth because you have their paper. You'll see. You can't rack up $24 trillion and not pay the piper somewhere down the pike, and it's coming. You see, what are they going to do? Well, they're going to inflate you right out of your wealth. Okay, let me ask. If it inflates to 100 trillion, how much money do you have? I mean, if this won't even buy a loaf of bread, how much will your dollars buy? Nothing. They just stole everything you ever worked for. They stole your 401k, they stole your stocks and bonds. I mean, the only thing that you have is what you own and you've paid for. And if you owe the bank, well, then they're going to own it. They're going to own it that too. Don't believe me? Go and look where all these currencies have failed. Look what happened to the folks who had it. In the Weimar Republic, when they took a wheelbarrow of money to buy a loaf of bread, the only ones that survived that had dollars. I listened to a guy who talked about a man whose family came from Bulgaria, and I guess I didn't know they had a currency crisis there at one point. And they had a mortgage note on their house, and they hadn't paid hardly anything on it. And then this currency, the collapse of their currency started happening and hyperinflating, and the guy happened to have some dollars. He had a $100 bill, and he paid off his house. Why? He had something that still had value, and he paid off his house. And by the way, at that time, that $100 bill was probably gold-backed. And he paid off he said he hadn't paid anything on the market. It was probably, it might have been a $10, $12, $15, $30,000 home. Paid it off with a $100 bill. It had something of value. And that's what they'll do. Everybody will rush to something with value. But the thing is, none of these, they're rushing to the dollar right now. That's where they're all going. But when that goes, where are they going to go? Well, they're going to run to gold and silver, but man, there's only 2 Olympic-sized swimming pools of that, and most of the banks have already collected it. So they'll buy up all the silver, and then they'll buy up the copper, and then they'll buy up aluminum, and then they'll buy up any commodity that they can buy. And they're finding out that oil is not a very good one since it went minus $50 a barrel. But how much do you think is out there to buy? Not near enough for everybody to preserve their wealth, not even close. So a little bit of preparation for this, a little bit of consideration for this might go a long way in the future. Just a word. I'm not saying, sell your house and sell your blood and sell your body parts and buy gold and silver, but, it wouldn't hurt to have a little bit. It might feed you one day. They're going to have to capture the marketplace and make it borderless. Because what they did with that temple, the confines of that temple, it gave them a marketplace that they controlled everything within the border of that market. That's what those money changers and those that sold those animals were doing. And by the way, they were hand in hand with one another. I mean, they would come in. I hope I didn't get past that. No, I haven't covered that yet. I'll show you this. I want to show you the system that God set up and why it's perfect. But we may have to get to that next week. Anyway, turn to Revelation 13:17. But as long as they had control of that marketplace, they really could do whatever they wanted. And you're going to have a world that's a controlled marketplace. So you got to take the mark of the beast to buy or sell. He says there in Revelation 13:17, and that no man might buy or sell. You can't even sell your junk. You can't sell even your commodities you might have. I'm talking about this is in the middle of the tribulation, by the way. We're not going to be here for that, but the rest of the world is. And it says that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. See, it's not just the mark. You could have his name, or the number of his name. We know what the number is. We even know what the mark is. We don't know what his name is. From Scripture, we know the mark. It's a big black kiss. It's a leopard spot. That's the mark. The number is 666, Revelation 13:18, I believe. But we don't know what his name is. He's been called by all kinds of different names, and it'd be kind of crazy if he shows up and his name's Judah or Judas. Who knows? He says he'll come in his own name. I don't know what that is, but it'll probably come up 666. But they'll capture the marketplace because, listen, it's a borderless market, but it's completely controlled. You couldn't go anywhere on earth and buy or sell without it because there's no currency. It'd probably be completely illegal, maybe even a death sentence, to own or to possess gold or silver because they're going to want to collect all that. Just like they collected it from you before. You remember what? Well, you probably don't remember, but I believe it was Roosevelt that signed a decree, and guess what? He made it illegal to own gold, and they confiscated all the gold in this country. Did you realize that happened? Now, it was after World War I. I'm thinking 1933, somewhere in there, when that happened. That's when we actually started going off the gold standard. But war debt, that's, it's because all this debt and stuff and this, we're going to have to collect the gold. And it was illegal to hold a gold coin. Now, it's not illegal now. And there's no way, the confiscation now, there's not enough gold on this earth to cover the currency. If we wanted to gold back our currency at the level we have it right now, we're talking trillions and trillions. An ounce of gold would be worth $500,000, $1 million, because that's how much is out there that would have to be backed. So you can see that probably wouldn't work. But when you start over, and oh, by the way, these are actually in reverse. This is when it inflated. This is when they took the zeros off. So that's all they do. It got so bad in the Weimar Republic, you took a pin, scratched through all the zeros, I mean, come on, man. That's what it says, $100 trillion right there. I mean, come on. I got $100 trillion. If this was 100 trillion American dollars, I could actually pay off the national debt and have enough change to own an island or so, just paper. And I guess the reason why I'm bringing this study is this thing's coming to an end. It is coming to an end. If you can't see it, I expected it 10 years ago. And the fact that it's coming along now doesn't surprise me a bit. I thought, man, this looks like this is when they're going to, it's like I said, we're preparing for somebody to show up. And that white horse rider needs a reason to show up. That ought to excite you, Christian. Because before he shows up, the one who loved us and died for us shows up. It gets us out of here. So for us, it's not really, woe is me. It's like, no, man, it's good. It's actually good news for us. I feel sorry for the world. Try to get as many out as I can. They're not going to believe you. You tell them this stuff, they look at you like you're crazy. And yet it is unfolding. And I'm seeing China's getting blasted. Their economy's getting, the United States is getting blasted. Just wait and see how it turns out for Europe. See if they don't band together. See if they don't pull this thing out of the fire for themselves. But ours just keeps getting worse and worse. Because that's eventually what's going to happen. So they'll capture the marketplace and make it borderless. So they cultivate a one-world religion. They create a one-world currency. They capture the marketplace and make it borderless. And the last thing they do is they control it all by one supernatural man that shows up. And the world says, we have finally arrived. We have got we have got heaven on earth. We finally got utopia, and we got one man to run it all. And guess what? He's supernatural. He's Superman. And he's not from around here. John 5:43, I'm come in my Father's name, and you receive me not. If another shall come in his own name, him ye will receive. He's going to come. So you think he's going to be born? I don't think so. Judas has already been born. He was the son of perdition. He's coming. He's coming from out there, or at least it'll appear to be. It comes from out there somewhere, and the whole world's looking for him. We've been looking for E.T. forever. And E.T.'s going to show up. And when he shows up, the whole world is going to, supernatural ability to heal, the ability to put, you know what? I thought about this. We gauge somebody's worth. We even gauge their godliness by how well they can put together an economy. Look at Donald Trump. Put together one of the greatest, most robust economies, at least 2 weeks ago, or a month ago, that we have ever seen in this country. And we applaud him. It's not like he's a godly man. I don't even know if he's saved. But you know that Adolf Hitler, he rescued Germany from a horrible, that Weimar, that's what he rescued them from. And yet he's probably a perfect type of the Antichrist. Winds up anti-Semitic and trying to kill the Jews, but he built Germany. Man, he nearly took almost 2/3 of Europe. In fact, he did. This guy that's coming is going to do the same thing. And he's going to control everything. And you've given him the means. We're up to 5G now on our internet. All the banks are tied together. All the grocery stores are tied together. Everything's tied together. You ever notice when the power goes out that nobody can say anything? You go, nope, registers are down. We'll catch it. Nope. Got to be able to plug it in. The only way they can do it is they keep a ledger. Well, these kids today, they can't even make you change without the thing telling you how much. I'm telling you, I worked a register for years. I could count that money backwards in my sleep. And I'm not very bright. But you go there, man, if that register went down about the time it's supposed to make change for you, it's all over. You ain't getting nothing back. I've had to sit there and tell them, so, okay, now, count with me. Because they don't teach them anything. Teach them basic math. They let the computer do everything for them. Well, we put everything on it. I thought today, honestly, I've been meaning to, got a little address book of putting everybody's name, address, phone number in this address book. Because I realized something. If our internet went down, I wouldn't know how to contact any of you. He said, well, call me. I don't have your number. Even if for such a thing as a payphone, I'd have to find a landline, and then I couldn't call you because your phone would probably be down, But even if I could get a hold of you, I don't know your number. I got it by your face, or your name. I don't know your number. Do you even know? Some people don't even know their own number. I barely got mine memorized, and I got my wife's. That's it. My kids, I don't know their numbers. I don't know them. If I didn't have it in my phone, I could not call. I wouldn't know how to reach them. That's how we depend on it. Well, the whole world's tied to this system. And it's humongous. And it'll work perfectly for what... Do you see how it's all lined up? All we need is for him to show up. But before he shows up, we get out. That's the blessing of it. Now, next week, I'm going to cover the one world currency, because we're going to get into it a little bit deeper, the one world marketplace, the one world religion, and the one world dictator, and a one world ID. That's what we'll finish up with. The reason I did this study on money is not because, money's important, let's face it. But it's what this thing's leading to that's more important. What it suggests is going to happen in the very near future. I had something else here, and I don't know if I've covered it or I missed it. Oh, when we talk about that situation in the temple, one of the things they did is they even made the religion about money and merchandise. That sound familiar? That's about what the local church is about, it's about money and merchandise. That's what they made it about. The Bible talks about filthy lucre, and I think I mentioned this last week, that lucre is material gain. And the reason why the God calls it filthy lucre is because the whole world lieth in wickedness. It's all filthy to him. And he says this about filthy lucre. He says we are not to be greedy of it. Everybody in here has to make material gain, unless you don't care about eating, right? You go work for material gain, you sell things for material gain, but you're not to be greedy of material gain. That means the thing that drives you in life is material gain. This is what you live for, material gain. And people like that invest a good portion of their life in a stock market that may or may not give them that gain, but anyway, and they invest in things that might not be, the Bible talks about they that will be rich fall into many hurtful lust and snares. Usually people that want to be rich end up very poor. He says you're not to be greedy of it, filthy lucre, or given to it. It says that about ministers. I thought he used the same thing about not being given to wine and given as an alcoholic. And being given to filthy lucre is literally living for that material gain. Does some preachers start flashing before your eyes when you think of that? Okay. The ones with all the bling, the ones that are up there, and they're bringing in literally millions and they're living in mansions, but they say, they're there, as a sacrifice and service to God. I'm trying to figure out what sacrifice. And then I listen to them, I think, what service? There's nothing to them. But hopefully you can see that. We're not to be greedy of it. We're not to be given to it. And that is, this world is not about how much material gain you got, because it's all going to burn up. And you know what? If it doesn't all burn up, somebody will probably take it from you. And that's what's about ready to happen. But thank God we have something more enduring than what this world has to offer. So next week I'm going to finish up. I got plenty of material here just to finish up talking about this. And we'll look at a few more other things. And you'll see what's lining up and getting ready to happen here in short order. And like I said, it might bounce a little bit. It might go upward a little bit. But as far as I can tell, this economy is not going to turn over like they think it's going to. They are saying there's going to be 40% unemployment. 40%. And a good majority of those people are not getting their jobs back. They died. They're gone. The ones that you think would get their jobs back, how long before people start sitting in restaurants to order their food again? It might be months. And even then, they can't even put the same number of people in that restaurant. Now they got to have space, so they can only have half as many tables. I'm sure you see what's going to happen. Prices are going up, folks. They're sending you $1,200 checks and $500 for your kids, and they're printing that money, and then they're bailing out the banks, then they're bailing out the businesses, then they're bailing out this and that. What do you think is going to happen to the price of things? Going up. Not only is it going up because they're inflating the money, it's going to go up because there's not going to be that much out there to buy. And when things get rare, might I remind you of the Cabbage Patch doll? What would you pay for it now? I wouldn't give you a nickel for it. Back then, they were killing people over one. Why? It was a rare, it's hard to get. So what happens when your toilet paper gets hard to get? What happens when going into a steakhouse, you find out, and by the way, they've nearly shut down our pork industry. They've shut down one of the beef industries because of this virus. What do you think they're producing while they're shut down? Nothing. You know that all that goes into the pipeline? Your food, I know it arrives, and it's fresh and whatever, but usually it takes a little bit of time for everything to start flowing through. So you're going to see things start getting scarce. You're going to see things hard to get. We haven't seen it now because we're not feeling it, because the pipeline is still flowing through from before the virus came and before they shut down everything, but it's coming. This in combination with everything else, I think it's a knockout punch. I'm sorry to be so negative. I really am. But I'll tell you what, since 2010, I've been screaming this and saying, this thing's got to come because he's coming. The prince of this world cometh. And this world's got to be ready for him. And they're going to want him so bad that when he shows up, guess what? Who is able to make war with the beast? They think he's a living end, and it'll be the devil. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Thank you much.